Hello, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Mike Tellerino, the CEO and founder of K9 for Veterans. We're here tonight to discuss the new laws that are in effect for veterans, and also we're going to touch on a few other comments and that I was called upon to talk about tonight that we got from some of our veterans that were having some issues, and maybe our guest Alex Michael will be able to help us with. First of all, let me introduce yourself.
I'm Alexander Michael. I'm an attorney. I work in the firm of Ettinger and Bezbekos. We're out in Palos Heights. Our phone number is 708-923-0368. If there's any questions that you might have after watching the show and you want to discuss them further, I'm available at that number. Again, it's 708-923-0368.
And then we have our co-host, beautiful Jillian Jans.
Hi-yo.
I guess the first question we're going to talk about is State University's Civil Law Amendment. This legislation was primarily concerns Reserve and National Guard members that also work in non-military capacity under the State University's Civil Acts. That's a mouthful. Okay.
Is that similar to the deployment and the safety of the redeployment and deployment rights one?
Well,
but it's for the college end?
Well, what this does, essentially for military members who work in the college and university campus setting, when they have to go off and serve our country, they don't have to lose that time for seniority. So it's not going to cost them to essentially do their duty for our country. And that's what that's going for.
So let go of a position or let go of
They can't be let go. They can suffer no ill consequences for taking time off from their job to keep us safe, essentially.
So I'm working somewhere. I've got 3 years vested in this company. I get called upon to be deployed. So I have to leave, serve my country. Typically, my time would stop with that company as far as
Before that's what used to happen, but
Right.
now with this new act, now your time continues to
So it
improve.
just continues. So it's not you're not being penalized for anything.
You're not being penalized, correct?
And that's similar to the college. So the college and the employment one are kind of just one and the same.
They're
but
one of
just
the same, correct?
Different
Right.
legalese, I guess.
Correct.
Okay. Next one I want to discuss is the missing high-risk military person. Why don't you explain what that is?
Well, anytime someone goes missing, there's word put out, and people start looking for you. Normally, the police. When you're labeled a high risk, it essentially creates a situation where that person is more important to be found first because they're, number one, a danger to themselves and a danger to others. And when that's the case, that person needs to be found much more quickly.
Alex, is that because they're a veteran and PTSD related? Does it have anything to do with that puts them on a higher level of, trying to find this person than it would be if you or I went missing? I should say me.
It certainly could be simply because if you are suffering from PTSD, you may have a situation where that person could be out on their own. They don't know where they are. Something could happen where that PTSD gets triggered, and you don't know how they'll react.
I think more commonly though, what we're going to see in the future is CTE, the same as the football players have, like with the long-term traumatic brain injury stuff, and that being more of a hazard to others around them. Because the PTSD, I'm sticking with my initial, that's not the stuff that you're going to see where it's outwardly affecting other people.
Clarify this. You're married to a veteran,
Yes,
John Jans.
My husband has post-traumatic stress disorder, and he has a traumatic brain injury from his service in Iraq and Ramadi in 2005-2006. He was Marine Corps.
So if he was to go, John doesn't come home tonight, you call the police department and say, oh God, my husband's missing. Okay, are they going to put any more emphasis on finding John because he's a veteran with this new law than they would last year because it wasn't in place?
That's Alex.
Yeah. I mean that's essentially exactly what it's designed to do.
Now, what's the difference between the way that they're phrasing this and an Amber Alert?
Yeah, good question.
An Amber Alert generally relates to a child. Mm-hmm. So a child is generally a defenseless individual who's gone missing, and when that's the case, usually because of a suspected kidnapping, if a child isn't found within the first 24 hours of been gone missing, the chances of finding that child alive usually are slim to none.
Right. Isn't
So-
they say the first
So-
24 hours?
It's crucial. Yeah.
But now, here's what I want to know on top of that is that with the veterans end of it, like we get an Amber Alert on our phone. You have an option to opt in for an Amber Alert. You hear the Amber Alert on the radio. Is that how the veterans high risk one is going to work? And what is the wording in there that says silver? It's silver alert. Do you know
Well,
anything about that?
I don't even think they know that.
I'm not really sure that that's been implemented yet.
No.
Okay.
But I mean, essentially, how they get it out, I think that's more generally throughout the police and through
Okay.
that kind of thing. I haven't seen any silver alerts being implemented as of yet. That may
Okay.
change going forward.
What is a silver
but,
alert? That's the
I mean, it's essentially the same thing as an Amber Alert, but
okay. So that was what I was talking about, like on the radio and all of that.
right.
For anybody who needs it, if you have a veteran that is missing or suspected to be possibly harming themselves or anything, there's a lot of military and spousal support groups online that you can post your missing flyers to there for right now, for what that's worth.
So, again, this is something that's newly enacted to help locate a veteran who otherwise may be out there thinking about harming himself, not other people but himself.
Right.
So you have a concerned spouse like Jill that said, hey, my husband didn't come home, I'm concerned for his safety. So they call the police, and now they put special emphasis on finding him over that typically they would have before.
Right, and I also think they're gonna proceed with a different level of caution, but still like a different level of just understanding. Hopefully,
Right.
if they're the understanding kind of police officers that are gonna be able to handle the veteran
Well-
crisis a different way than you would have handled a person who is
Here, here's my thoughts.
of the.
When the police get called to a home of a veteran with PTSD, I think they need to have somebody who specifically knows more about PTSD responding to that call, because I think if the wrong officer responds, he could push that veteran over the top
Sure.
just by the way he's reacting to that veteran. In other words, the veteran's confused, not sure what he's doing, whatever. An officer pulls up and he's got that authoritative type of demanding thing. I mean, that's not the right approach for a veteran who's suffering from PTSD. Am I right?
It depends on the type of episode they're having, but yeah, I mean that's.
That could basically push them over the top.
Well, it's gonna either make them go through the flight.
Combative.
Right, like
Combative.
it's combative, and if not, it's just gonna send them running or fighting, and there's just too many possibilities there. But I can speak from personal experience that when my husband had his episode that we mentioned a few of our episodes ago, I was given the option to call the police by the Veterans Crisis Line, and the Veterans Crisis Line told me to either call the local police or to check my husband into a mental health facility, which I refused to do. And I didn't call the police either because I didn't think that they had any experience with this
Right.
specific situation, and I didn't want that to happen, and I wasn't willing to risk that and his safety. But you are correct. I think it would be great for a
If they
part
had
of the
some
police department to do,
training
yes.
in responding to a call from a spouse of a veteran with PTSD, so they know how to react to that. And that brings up another point I want to talk about before we get too far, is the gun laws. Alex, why don't you explain to us what the changes are in the new gun laws?
Well, now there's a new law that's been enacted that essentially allows people to raise a complaint and go before a judge and tell a judge that they're concerned that a veteran may be able to harm themselves or harm someone else, and that would allow the judge to issue an order to go in and seize any weapons that may be in that individual's house. Now, I mean, while this could have potential benefits, there are a number of issues that this also raises in terms of
What are they?
constitutional issues. So, I mean, if you're aware of the Fourth Amendment, it prevents you from having unauthorized search and seizure. Now, I mean, obviously, this is a judicially issued procedure, but nevertheless, I mean,
It's specifically targeted
it's-
at veterans.
It's specifically targeted to veterans, and anyone who has even a slight disagreement could theoretically bring this bring this charge and go before a judge and tell a judge, I believe there is this concern.
I did read into a little bit about like there's like 5 or so different things that they have to, 5 criteria they have to meet to be able to bring it to a judge if you're not a police officer.
So
Like,
an
you have
upset
to-
spouse,
Right,
you're
you
mad
can't
at
be like
me.
separated from your spouse like
Right.
within like a year and a half.
Well, even
and
if
then
we're
do
living
that.
together and I have a fight with you, and I say, well, I'm gonna get even with you, I'm gonna call the police and I'm gonna go to court
Right, like
and tell them
there's-
that you're,
There's a bunch of those situations that they've mentioned in there, but I think personally, I think there are too many of those situations that can get really out of hand and really spiteful and vindictive really quick. And the people who are going to pay the price is the veterans who gave us the freedom to make those kind
Alex,
of choices.
what are the legal remedies? Like, she goes to court, tells the court that I'm a danger to myself, and they should take my firearms, okay? What legal remedies, if you know, and I don't know that you know them, and can I do to fight that? I mean, how do you fight something like that?
There would have to be an evidentiary hearing. A judge would have to make a determination, and you would be able to defend yourself in such an instance. You would be able to hire an attorney. You would be able to present evidence that you are not a danger. And in such instances, you'd also have to probably undergo some kind of evaluation.
Forensic evaluation.
Yeah, right, to determine whether or not you are in fact a danger. And if a medical professional determines that you are not a danger,
But they're gonna come and take your
Right.
guns right away. Then you have to go to that hearing.
right, well, so when you have an right, that's the problem with an emergency circumstance. The emergency always trumps, and they're going to have to go in, take it, and then you can come back and prevent yourself. And in the meantime, you're kind of out of luck.
Right.
But
Yeah.
ultimately, justice should prevail. But that's in a perfect world. The world is unfortunately far from perfect.
If you remember a few years ago, my husband got into a little bit of a problem with a skunk and a bow and arrow. So if anybody ever
Only John.
has nothing to do, Google "man shoots skunk with bow and arrow" and my husband's information will come up there. But the long story short is they confiscated his bow and arrow, and it was a like township court thing that we had to go to. But they swore up and down they were going to keep it, and then we got to that day, and luckily it was Veterans Day, the day the court was on, of course, of all days. And they're like, we're going to drop every charge, which I mean it was unlawful use of a weapon within city limits. And
For a bow and arrow.
For a bow and arrow, because he was walking Ellie, who's our service dog, and there's skunks around, and you can't have a service dog with a skunk spray on it. So he had the bow and arrow, and anyway, he shot the skunk, and it went through the skunk, and the skunk sprayed everywhere. It's a fun story. But that end of it is they gave him dismissal of the charges, and they were going to give him the bow and arrow back, except for it disappeared in the meantime. So that was a cease and...
So then, again, they could come in, take your gun, you have to go to court, and you have to defend yourself based on your other half's recommendation that you're a harm to either yourself or to them.
And
Correct.
I would say, I mean, from personal experience, that I wouldn't count on getting your weapons back because it's not something that we've ever seen happen.
think, Alex,
Regardless of whether or not it's justified that they're taken away from you for your own safety.
Right.
It's something that either way, I think that it's not going to be an easy process to return
Alex,
to
you
you.
think that's related specifically or geared towards veterans because of the PTSD?
I don't think it's specifically
You don't think
geared.
they're targeted?
I don't think it's specific targeting. I think what it is it's an unfair consequence. You know, if you think the legal system has a lot of instances where this happens, and it happens to even in the relation, just a husband-wife relationship or boyfriend-girlfriend situation where someone can file an emergency order of protection against each other, and then
Right.
someone is just barred from coming to their home.
Then
for a
you have to
couple-
go defend yourself.
Right, and because of the emergency nature of it, someone can go in without notice to the other side. So let's say my girlfriend goes to the court and says, I'm in danger. I feel like Alex is going to attack me.
But see, they might have a lawyer's version of that, though.
Okay,
Like that,
correct,
that's what
correct,
that's
but-
what to me would stick with my side.
But what would happen is, for 2 weeks, I would be unable to go to my home, and I would be stuck having to stay somewhere else
Until you go to court to defend
until I can go to
yourself.
court. Right, and this is just an unfortunate downside of the legal system. So
But
it's
that's not because of who you are and what you do for a living or as part of your identity. It's a part of the relationship that you chose to be in. Like,
But don't you
that's
think
what
more
just-
veterans are being singled out because of
Absolutely.
their PTSD?
Right.
Absolutely. This,
This-
this
I
is
mean,
Because
that
it's so out there now and so in the public
they're
eye.
choosing to take the
Correct.
negative things that are going on with the veterans in the news and use them, in my opinion, against the saddening fact that suicides are, 18, 22 a day, depending on who you read it from. But those two things that you're going to want to help prevent suicides, and you're going to want to help prevent any violence because you don't know what
Crazy laws,
PTSD
I have to tell
actually
ya.
is. So the stigma goes along with it. And then now I'm wondering, now the veterans ID, that whole thing, the designation, so you can get your veterans ID, the sticker on your license with a VA ID, or what is it that
No,
you
it
use?
just says veteran.
No, that one's already been there though. But the Designation Act was for that you could use your VA card.
You can
I think,
get
as
the
your-
Army, Navy, Marines insignia on there.
Now the
my
branches are.
understanding.
Okay, I thought it was that you could use some other kind of ID because you use your driver's license, a passport, or the here's it a federal veterans ID card. It's identify or acceptable form of proof required to verify an applicant for the veterans designation.
Well, let me tell you, that's getting back to the FOID card.
And that's what I'm saying is if we have veterans, and like you acknowledge that they're a veteran on their ID, and you're pointing it out there, and you're pointing it out for the court for the if they're at risk, and then you have the gun laws on top of it that are restricting the certain things that are, if I'm giving my personal opinion, leaning towards veterans issues, and then add on top of that the last of the gun safety ones, which is that you're changing the definition of patient in your FOID card eligibility to expand and make more people who are eligible for the FOID card not eligible now.
Alex, why don't you explain what the changes are in the gun card law?
Convince me that it's not all against
Well,
veterans.
with the
Use your lawyering skills.
Well, with the new FOID card regulations, what's now happening is they've expanded the definition of patient. So, before you had to be committed, in essence, in order to be barred from a FOID card. Now, even any kind of psychiatric hold that you've been placed on can now bar you from obtaining your FOID card.
And isn't it true that when people come back from combat deployment, they are placed on a psychiatric hold?
That's true.
So you are immediately then disqualifying all those veterans.
You, basically, yes,
Technically you are.
that is the unfortunate consequence of it. And so there are arguments both ways. There are arguments that this is a necessary consequence in order to keep guns out of the hands of those who can't handle it. But at the same time, you're
Those
basically
people are trained
right,
to-
right. But basically, you're saying that anyone who's ever been in the military is not able to handle it, and that's not true.
Because you've sent them over to-
So if I
Right.
have a veteran who's being treated at the VA for his PTSD, that's automatically going to disqualify him for a FOID card?
If he was in combat, which
If he was placed on a psychiatric hold for any reason, it will disqualify him.
Okay, let's just say,
That's golf.
let's just say he's going for treatment for his PTSD at the VA. He's being seen by a psychiatric doctor.
I want to say that it's more of the Gulf War and on where they had the psychiatric hold when the guys were
Yeah, but how
between
can
coming
they
home and being
determine
there.
for what war he served in
Because
or what
Vietnam,
combat?
you were in the jungle and then you were home.
But seeing a
there was
doctor,
no psychiatric in
but
between.
seeing a doctor is seeing a doctor.
That's
if you're seeing
not
a
a psychiatric hold
doctor-
though. A psychiatric hold is where you're not allowed to do anything without your psychiatrist's approval and understanding.
Yeah.
In that time frame. Like when John was done with his Iraq deployment before he came back to the States, he spent a week in Kuwait when he was on, let's call it a psychiatric hold, where you're not allowed to watch TV, you're not allowed to read the news, you're not allowed to do anything other
So
than relax.
they're not discriminating against any veteran who is presently being seen at the VA with the psychiatrist, am I right?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand.
No.
Okay, so if you got a
Yeah.
veteran who's just going to his therapy classes at the VA for his PTSD, they're not going to use that against him.
Right.
That's not what it's designed. No, it has to be an actual psychiatric hold. So,
Okay.
right, so more to what she was describing, where she's saying that they're kind of placed in a room and they're not allowed to do anything except relax without the permission of their psychiatrist. In those kind of instances, that's what they're talking about. But just visiting your doctor isn't necessarily
Okay.
a
A
bar.
hold.
Right.
And that's because when they come back from the deployment, they have an increased amount of all of the arousals,
Right.
everything from being in such combat situations.
Okay.
So it's for their safety, and I don't understand how that would affect the long-term ability to have a.
Right, this is an extremely unfair, there has to be some kind of greater distinguishing factor where, just because
too broad.
It's
That's
too
too
broad,
broad.
right, essentially, it's
And-
too broad.
And at the same time, it's too specific.
Right, and even if this is an unintended consequence, it is a consequence nonetheless, and it needs to be addressed.
Especially.
Okay. Last week, I've got some questions from some of our viewers and from our veterans who had some issues. And one of the things, Alex, you and I had talked about this before. We had a veteran who is looking to rent an apartment. He goes out, he's got a service dog, he's black, he's got PTSD. He goes to look at this apartment, the apartment complex or whatever it is, tells him, when he talks to him on the phone, to go see it, oh yeah, come on in, it's available, we'll show it to you, whatever.
They can't see him or see his.
Yeah, he gets there, all of a sudden, oh, well, you know what? We just rented out, we had took a deposit, I wasn't aware that we took a deposit, and we had talked earlier, what could we do about that? I mean,
Well-
how does somebody fight that feels they're
Right.
being discriminated
So
against?
this is a very difficult situation, actually. In a situation like this, if this is happening to you over and over, you may feel discriminated against and you feel like you have no recourse. So what you need to do in a situation like this is if you believe that someone is doing this just because you're a veteran or you have a service dog or for racial reasons, then in that instance, what I would suggest is have someone else place a call and try to speak to the same person, or go out there and try and feign interest in this apartment and try and see if they'll offer it to that person. Now, if that's the case, now you have actual proof.
So you have to honeypot him?
Right. You basically have to corner this person and have actual proof that you were lied to, because otherwise, if you don't have someone else who was offered the same thing that you were denied that right to, it's basically a game of he said, she said, and it's what's in that person's head. Did they really get a deposit, or
So
did they?
technically, you're saying
Right.
there's really not much you could do.
Well, no,
Legally, there's not much.
No,
you
there
can
is
do.
something you can do, but you have to
Have proof.
You have to go through alternate means of finding proof that there is something here, that you were being told something that was untrue.
I mean, this guy's been
Right.
all over the map trying to find a place to stay, and every time he goes someplace, they're telling him it's either, it's gone.
What kind of
Okay,
dogs do you have?
we've got a minute left.
Okay.
So I just want to say, if you have any questions, Alex is going to give you his contact information regarding any of these laws that are geared towards our veteran. It's just amazing how fast things could change.
Right.
And how quickly they can get out of hand.
Yeah, how
Right.
quickly they can get out of hand. I want to thank Jillian Jans for being a co-host tonight,
Thank you, Mike Pillarino.
and Alex Michael, if you would mind just telling people again who they can contact if they have any questions, legal questions that you could help them with.
If you have any questions, you can always contact me at my office. Our phone number is 708-923-0368. Again, 708-923-0368. And my office is out in Palos Heights. The firm is Ettinger and Brisbacos.
It's an excellent firm. Michael Ettinger is a personal friend of mine. He's done more for our organization than I could begin to tell you. He's been an awesome asset. So is Alex. Alex is almost being part of the family lately.
Yeah, I look forward to being here again.
And you will be, believe me.
Thank you for having me.
So again, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. You could find us on Facebook, K9 for Veterans NFP, and you can also go to our website, which is the letter K, the number 9, the letter S, D.org, and you could find out a lot more about what K9 for Veterans does. And
And you can watch any of the old videos of this show on
Yeah.
YouTube too.
right, we're located. Thank you. Have a good
Good night.
evening.
Thank you.